Last week, J.D. Vance gave an interview saying he's, quote, come around to the Ron Paul argument on the Fed. After Donald Trump endorsed abolishing the income tax last week, going Ron Paul on the Fed is some pretty heady stuff for the leading ticket in a U.S. presidential election. Now, Ron Paul, of course, views the Fed as a corrupt instrument bribed into existence by elite banks that siphons capital from the people and directs it to the elite and, above all, to the government, while as a possibly intentional side effect whipsawing the economy into perpetual cycles of inflation and recession, where the only thing you can count on is everything will get more expensive. Now, I'm not sure if Vance has read Ron Paul's End the Fed or Murray Rothbard's The Case Against the Fed, but he clearly understands the results of the Fed's redistribution of wealth, that it gives big business preferential access to capital, cheap loans, that they use to buy up the entire country from market share to smaller competitors to the part that bothers J.D. Vance, houses. Vance notes that if you have to borrow at 7% on your mortgage, but BlackRock gets money for 1.5%, they will get the house you will rent. This has been a growing problem throughout the Fed's low-rate era that started with the 2008 bank bailouts. Because low rates are a kind of permanent bank bailout, it has snowballed to where, according to Realtor.com, big investors now buy over 15% of homes bought in the U.S. In states like Arizona, it's closer to 1 in 3. And according to another study by Redfin, this is absolutely about preferential access to loans. Redfin found that investors bought about 1 in 7 high-priced homes, but they bought fully 1 in 4 low-priced and starter homes. In other words, they are bidding families out of the market, but they're especially outbidding poor families. Of course, the problem is much bigger than houses. Subsidized Fed money drives industry concentration as small guys drop out and big companies gobble up their market share. So small towns in America used to have mom-and-pop diners. Now they have a Burger King. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. I think JD is still early in the journey, but the obvious solution is end the Fed, or at least get the Fed out of the business of setting interest rates and manipulating them below market. Because today, the Fed has two main jobs: bailing out banks, or ensuring the stability of the financial system, and setting interest rates. In theory, it sets interest rates to the big brain optimal trade-off between inflation and growth, a permanent firefighter using an elastic currency as lubricant for our economy. In reality, of course, the Fed is not the firefighter, it is the arsonist, driving money as cheap as possible to feed inflation, then whiplashing to savage rate hikes when the inflation blows up in its face, as just happened. Given the vast majority of money borrowed in America, about 85%, goes to government, corporations, and the richest 10%, that means subsidized loans amount to a permanent trillion-dollar siphon from the 90% of the people to the elite. Of course, this is why central banks were created ever since the Bank of England, which was founded as a counterfeiting cartel in return for cheap loans to government. It's also why the Fed was founded, to siphon wealth to Wall Street and to the government. And it will not stop until the Fed loses their interest rate monopoly and, ideally, loses their license to print. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.